Hello, viewers, and welcome to the latest episode of the Huddle. Tim Poole here, joined by Alex Alvarado, VP of Casino Operations at MGM National Harbor. Alex, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, looking forward to talking to you. About various different things that I think our viewers and listeners are going to be excited about hearing about. To start off with, your journey on quite a broad level involves Guatemala, Las Vegas, Maryland, and more. Tell us as much as you can about it.
Sure. Thank you. Look, it's been an adventure and a half. I think every time I get a chance to stop and look back, I'm always grateful for it. So my parents are from Guatemala. English is my second language. And I was born in Brooklyn, New York. My parents' ultimate goal was always to make their way back to Guatemala. So I was in New York City till about the age of 12. And then at 12, we moved to Guatemala. And, even though I was initially a little bit lost, because I'll say by the time we got to Guatemala, my sister and I were speaking more Spanglish, let's say, than we were speaking Spanish anymore. So it was almost a relearning, and that was an incredible time. But I ultimately fell in love with it. For better or worse, my parents realized that even though they would always be Guatemalan, they were definitely American, and they had a really hard time going into a lifestyle that shuts down at 5 o'clock. And all the things, right, in a third world country that are more typical. For me, the experience of everything from what you eat to how you get your food, and that process of definitely having family together each night. The passion for different kinds of sports, right? I became an avid soccer fan, football fan. But nonetheless, a couple of years later, we were packing bags and we were headed back to the States. My dad was in the restaurant business his whole life. And so, he worked in kitchens across Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York City, most of his adult life. And so when we came back to the States, a friend of his was opening what would become a pretty popular chain of breakfast cafes in Las Vegas, a place called Blueberry Hill. And so we ended up in Las Vegas. So I ended up finishing high school and went to college in Las Vegas. I originally went to school for IT. And then, I started and sold a small business, and which basically left me with nothing to do. And at that same time, I had a classmate that had joined at the time a small company called NRT, which was on the verge of revolutionizing the industry with the all-in-one ticket redemption unit. So I joined NRT, and the next thing I knew, I was traveling all over the world for them, getting product approvals and, spending time in lots of different gaming jurisdictions. And when I wasn't doing that, I was helping to sell the product. And then ultimately, when those approvals started to come in, I was circling back to now install the technology and train the staff on how to maintain that product. And so, when larger operators like Caesars and MGM Resorts, started to come on board, I started to get, receive offers to join the operator side of the business. And so, that's kind of how I first entered the operator side of the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. MGM National Harbor, massive property, but time more broadly with MGM Resorts as a whole, intrinsically intertwined with anything gaming, not just in Vegas, across the US, and I suppose more recently, ever so slightly more internationally with that kind of acquisitions and going online. But talk us through your time kind of with MGM Resorts.
Yep. So as I said, it actually ties right there. So leaving NRT in 2005, I joined MGM Resorts, specifically at MGM Grand in Las Vegas. I started on the slot floor, on the slot service side. So literally, keeping the place looking good, paying jackpots, keeping the staff communicated and whatnot. It was really a great time and great timing. I've always been a really curious person that likes to learn things at a very deep level. And fortunately, the company was fine with me shadowing other areas, right? So I spent a lot of time back then just trying to understand different processes and groups like, how does the drop work? How does the cage interact? How do casino audits work? And I didn't realize it at the time, but obviously that would pay off tremendously for me down the line. After some time, I started to become more aware of all the movement on casino floors, right? Products coming in and out, install, de-install. And I I was raised by entrepreneurs really. And so I've always had that mindset, even if I'm, part of a different company, my thought is always to help be, become a decision maker, help be a part of the solution in the future. And so I realized that to be a part of that in the business, I needed to understand how those decisions were made. And that ultimately, drove me to start spending time with the performance people and the marketing analysts, right? I was really lucky after a couple of years. I got an opportunity. I actually left MGM for a period and I went to work for Aristocrat Technologies. And when I went to Aristocrat, it was really pretty neat because my IT background and my now casino ops background came together. And I got to work on everything from software to game development. I got to support it. And then eventually that's where I first started to manipulate raw data and create, analysis, right? So, and then after a few years, MGM gave me the opportunity to come back. This time I was more on the performance and marketing side. And I used to say for years, like that was my favorite job. Like that was the favorite job I ever had. Because I think really the insights and the learning just were magnified, right? And so you can just imagine how I often think back to it a lot like a math equation. I just kind of kept adding right to this base of knowledge of our business. And it just made it that much more fun for me. I remember receiving opportunities within our company to take on larger roles, but I was having so much fun doing what I was doing. But even still, after a few years, I moved over to the Mirage in a marketing manager role, and now I was leading all the teams, right? Within the lines of work that I had previously done. So everything from special events to loyalty and direct marketing and database, and that was kind of like the end of my second tour with MGM Resorts because I would leave again before I came back ultimately and arrived here in Maryland.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Mirage, at the time that this goes out, it might be sort of a week or two ago, but right now at the time of recording, it was yesterday that the Mirage closed. So, I mean, it's an opportune time to ask someone who's kind of was front and center at the property. How do you kind of reflect on, what is quite an end of an era for not just MGM, but Las Vegas and that skyline as a whole?
Yeah. Yeah, it's tremendous to think about. I'll start by saying I used to say a lot that would bum me out the most about working at the Mirage was that I couldn't hang out there anymore. Because I just love that property. I remember it was one of the first places my dad brought us to when we first moved to Las Vegas, right? Just kind of walking the strip. Like you walk the strip today, it's a different experience than it was 20 years ago, right? And the Mirage is very symbolic of truly the end of an era. When you think about walking the strip, and it was Mirage and TI, and I'll never forget, right? The pirate ship show on the strip, and of course the Mirage was the volcano, right? And so that the volcano erupting all day long. But even within the Mirage, right? I just think of all the firsts that happened there, right? That whole truly integration of all those different lines of business and just the vision that that the group that put that together had. Such a fun place, all the entertainment, all the food, iconic, the Superbook, the first really Superbook sports book, right, that was ever made. To this day, everything tries to replicate what that is. If you really walk all these new places and spaces, it's actually really incredible. I mean, I had a lot of fun times there. In my on the business side of it, in my first week on the job at the Mirage, I'll never forget it because this place. One of the reasons I loved it, is because it was so big, but to us it felt actually kind of small, right? It was very much like a family at that place. My first week on the job at the Mirage, there was a gentleman named Felix Rappaport. He was the COO of that property at that time. And coincidentally, my first few weeks on, my boss was on a 2-week cruise with guests, right? So there was an annual or biannual, I can't remember now, cruise where we would take out some of our best customers. And, Felix was preparing for a board meeting. And so I all of a sudden, being kind of a new employee, became his primary support to put together, all the prep related to this meeting. And I can't begin to tell you, and I think about it all the time. I had never met this man. And not only did he make me feel welcome, but I'll never forget just the undivided attention and the questions and the trust. And that was the beginning of my time at the Mirage, right? So, it was a couple months after that, my wife gave birth to our first child, and without hesitation, the approach was take as much time as you need, spend time with your family. We worked hard, we played hard. I definitely did not want to leave that place. When I left there, it was truly one of those, opportunities to catapult my family forward. I'll never forget my friend, Rick Hutchins, who at the time was like senior vice president of operations. He said to me, never seen a short timer work so hard in his life, right? Because I probably worked longer hours in my last few days at the Mirage because I felt like I just didn't want to leave. But it was just a tremendous property. It's a tremendous group of people. It was really, I saw a lot of the articles and, how many day one employees, like just think about that, right? 1986, I think was when it opened. And so people that joined that place and just never left. And I think that's a huge testament to that property.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear the stories from someone from within the property, because we recently we did a huddle and ran an article on kind of the top 5 properties that have changed Las Vegas, and the Mirage was right in there among them, and it changed it on a on a business level, on an architectural level. So it's interesting to hear that just on a personal level, the kind of stories that you have as someone who worked there, and it, like you say, very notable that you remember that first week so well, and even the people that you met. I don't know if, given that answer, it might be a bit of a waste of time, this next question, but I want to ask the properties you worked at, what your favorite was. I mean, it kind of sounds like the Mirage has a head start on the others, at least.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think if you love this business, there are aspects of every place you've been that you think back to and remember, maybe fondly, right? But in some way, shape, or form, they all have a place, somewhere within you. It may have been that something made you mad, and if you gave it enough time, it became a lesson, right? Or you just cherish like good times. I've been many places where I think about opening properties and how at the beginning of every week looks like how are we going to do this, and yet at the end of every week it's like we got it done, right? But I'll say with all of that said, my favorite property is the one that I'm at now, at MGM National Harbor. This place was a true labor of love, I guess, in many ways, as might be the case for any of us. For me, it was the culmination of everything that I had got to experience in my career. Right? It was an unprecedented feat to bring something like this to life. Right? $1.5 billion integrated resort. Right here in the heart of the DC metro area. In a market with not a whole lot of a well of hospitality, sort of a workforce, let alone a casino workforce. And so all the things you have to bring to life, not only do you have to build the physical structure, but you have to build a workforce, right? And in the years since we've been here, short existence, but we've reinvented it numerous times in what really is a challenging market. It's a rewarding market, but it's a challenging market. I've had many colleagues, come and go, but all in all, this place just has a phenomenal leadership team, and the company has really supported us in shaping it, into what it's become. So I'm very, very proud of being part of this.
It's a nice segue into, obviously we will be talking about the National Harbor and several questions on it, but before we move specifically into it, wondering the kind of the career you've talked about and the stories you've told so far. I'm sure there's many more, and unfortunately we've not got all day, so there'll probably be a few stories that you can't tell us, but others will be lucky enough to hear. But we're to talk about the lessons learned along the way. So if there's any CEOs or perhaps any executives kind of in waiting with their kind of first big VP role coming up, what do you think are the most valuable things you've learned along the way that you could say, yes, if I'd known that, 20, 30 years ago, that would have been kind of like gold dust? What are the most important things you've learned along the way?
I think just you framing that immediately, but that's what happens is it brings just faces, right, to my mind. And the reason it does that is because I think the number one thing, that I've learned is that you have to embrace feedback, right? If you're the kind of individual that wants to hear what you do well, then, and that's all you want to hear, then your arc is going to be very limited. If you're an individual that embraces constructive criticism, and frankly, sometimes it doesn't sound so constructive because not everyone has, the tact to deliver information. But and I've worked with many of those individuals as well. But I've always tried my best to listen to what's being said, and and less to how it's being said. And I always try to give myself at least a day to let the emotions sit, because sometimes information and feedback can be shared and it makes us feel a certain way, right? It doesn't feel good because someone's telling us that they're looking for us to do something in a different way, or maybe to hit a different standard, right? And maybe we flat out have done something wrong. And it's important to remember that these individuals don't have to give you any feedback. I mean, the reality of it is you can be left to fail. And if someone doesn't care about you, maybe the best thing for them to do is to not tell you and let you fail. I was very fortunate, because I think it probably has something to do with the way that I was raised. I've always embraced it that way. And I've realized that the most painful feedback has been what's been ultimately the most formidable, right? And sort of character shaping feedback. So I think that's probably the chief lesson of all. I always tell people, like, what are you not? I always ask people, what are you not good at? What are you working on? Because that's really what's important. If you're good at something, it's probably very innate in you. You wake up and you do it every day. You provide that kind of direction. So I'd say that that's important. Generally, as you take on expanded roles, it's also important to, defer to others, and to not feel like you've got to be the first person to blurt out an answer. I think it's more important to ask questions. The more expansive the roles become. And a lot of the times also the importance of deference is that you can steal thunder, unknowingly from people that may need it, right? From emerging leaders. And you won't realize this at the time, but over time, that affects your relationship with your team. That affects your relationship with just teams in general. And so the more you do that, the more you support others, ultimately, the more successful you too will become. For me, the greatest satisfaction in this has become helping others grow and succeed. Some colleagues and I were just discussing this the other day over dinner, and there's no better feeling than when you wake up, and that you're about to hand someone good news that day. When someone's about to get a big raise, or someone's about to get a promotion, and then probably just the continual straddling of balance, right, between personal and your professional pursuits. For many of us, our work will end up being a large part of how we're defined, and how we're remembered. And many people are a lot more than just that, right? So I work hard at spending time with my family. I've got 4 kids, right? My wife, and I've also found a lot of satisfaction and purpose in giving back to the community and those that are less fortunate. And I think that if any of us, sit and think about that just a little bit, you might find that there may be something missing, and that can really, really fill that. And I think it just helps you be a more rounded individual. It makes you a better leader. It makes you a better parent, father, son, whatever. And it has really been profound for me. I recently, we had a series of health issues in my family recently. And I can tell you that somewhere in the middle of that, I was feeling like I was letting my team down, And I shared with a group of people recently when I started to come up for air, and I don't know what I expected, but I just shared that apologies if I've been a little bit less responsive and this and that. And in essence, and I didn't know what to expect, but in essence, what they said to me was that, there's no pocket that's going to undo, everything that they know about me. And so I guess that lesson is that, you're always building your reputation, right? And that speaks for itself, and I'm extremely grateful for that.
No, really well put answers. Fantastic. I mean, you can see you've kind of applied everything you've been through and really thought about those. I guess it's not always easy, especially kind of the first couple, kind of taking feedback, and as you say, taking a day to let the emotions settle. It's a really good idea. I guess it's something you've got to adapt to, and it's on a first time, and also kind of deferring to others and maybe letting others, I suppose, especially people kind of moving into leadership for the first time. I guess these are your first instinct might, not necessarily be to do that. So I guess as you say, you learn with time, these are very important things.
And it is, if you're fortunate, you realize, I realized more recently who my mentors were.
Hmm.
There seems to be a movement now where a lot of individuals are seeking mentorship, which I think is great. I had mentors. I had people that at the time I didn't realize were my mentors. They were individuals that just took a special, interest in me. And I think that probably helped that right along the way. Some of those people I was related to, but a lot of them were strangers before I met them. And for whatever reason, they started to lend feedback. And I was fortunate enough to take that feedback and actually take action on it.
Hmm. Well, National Harbor, as you said, your favorite property, but the one you're at the moment, kind of a real leader in Maryland, and of course we've kind of got the live casino there as well, and another big property. And I mean, obviously we've got several. Can you sort of talk us through the kind of the market characteristics and how you view it as kind of the VP of casino operations at this key property in this quite, as you say, interesting gaming kind of land and region?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Look, it's every market has its own identity, right? I think everywhere I've ever been, and every one of my colleagues in the industry I talk to, we all have a kind of the same sentence, which is, this market is super unique. This is a unique market. Well, so every market has its own identity. When you think about our place, we're 20 minutes from the White House, right? Our facility sits on the Maryland side of the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, connecting us to Northern Virginia. I stared at Washington D.C. here to my right side, and Old Town Alexandria on my left. And we're in a community that's been very welcoming. This is a very diverse area, right? It is as close to a melting pot as I've ever been to, and that's coming from a kid that was born in New York City, right, in Brooklyn, New York. And our property has spent a lot of time embedding itself in the community, making sure that opportunities that come out of this facility and this business are given to the community first. And I think as a result, we've been embraced. Like as you've said, there are great operators in this region. You mentioned Live, the Cordish companies. They've been in this market for a long time, as is Penn National, right? They have a facility about 90 minutes from here in Charlestown, West Virginia. And now commercial casinos have been welcomed in Southern Virginia, right? As have smaller historical horse racing facilities, and that keeps us all on our toes. So it's a market that is dynamic. It's a market that is high volume. It's a market that moves very, very fast, and it's built for individuals like that on all sides, right? Our customers are that way, and the people on our team that are successful are built that way as well.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to talk to you about kind of your main focuses when it comes to attracting players, because we've had Melanie Johnson a couple of times on the Huddle before, and she spoke to me about the unique nature, again the phrase unique, of kind of the regional casino model versus the kind of the big entertainment kind of Vegas model, where probably you're looking at most of your revenues not coming directly from gaming, but in regional markets it's a little bit different. It's primarily the kind of the casino, the games and the slot machines that get people through the door. But maybe you can tell me a little bit more about exactly what gets customers through the door and keeps them there.
Yep. And that's and that covers quite a bit of it, right? Look, I think what's most important for us is to remain focused and to stay true to what our identity is, right? This facility, we're a luxury gaming and entertainment integrated resort. When you walk into our place, you literally feel better, right? If we were to take this place and lift and shift it and put it in the middle of the Las Vegas Strip, it would be one of the nicest facilities there, right? Including your newest facilities on the Strip. So when guests visit us, they feel that, and it's important for us to remember that they feel that, right? It's important for us to continue to tell that story. As you said, I mean, we have a casino in this integrated resort, and it's one of the nicest casinos you've ever been to. But it's all the other components that are under this roof that really make it unique. It's the reason why individuals do drive past other casinos to come to ours, right? It's the entertainment, it's the world-class food and beverage, Our hotel, I have colleagues that visit, a lot of corporate headquarters, from the supplier side are based in Las Vegas, as you know. And so they're sort of used to that, and they visit many properties. I'll never forget a really good friend of mine who was recently first time visited the property, and she calls me from valet and she's crying as she's staring at a conservatory display that we have, at our main casino entrance. And I said, "What's wrong?" She goes, "Nothing. It's just beautiful." She's like, "This is not what I expected," right? One of my mentors was here recently, and he says, "Alex, every time I walk this, it's just overwhelming. It's just overwhelming." So I think that's a part of it. That's what we are. Now, what's important within that is that, we continue to focus on our service standards and, on our training, right? A lot of our staff, I've just told you about this beautiful building, and a lot of the staff, before they come here, they've never been in the industry before, right? They've never been in the hospitality industry, let alone work in a casino, right? So there's a learning curve there that we expect in order for them to meet, the MGM standards. So it's important for us to remain focused on that. And from there, our strategy takes care of the rest, right? We put a lot of time into how and what we do, and then we work that plan, right? This place evolves. It evolves continuously. I think our customers know that. I know our competitors know that, because they tell us. It's like, here you go again, and that's a key attribute, of this facility.
Mm-hmm. If we were to ask you about specifics, so you mentioned the different sources. You have the food and beverage, the entertainment, and obviously gaming is not to be forgotten as well. In terms of slot machines and products, or perhaps even if you're looking at the other sides, kind of restaurants and parts of the building, what are the ones that may be performing the best for you guys at the moment?
So on the gaming side, I would say, I've kind of adopted this methodology, for years now. That is to figure out, what games work. Sure, you can look at what's happening on your floor now, but it's important to understand games, much like you think about, like a sports franchise farm system, right? Is the best management, the best coaches that are given the ability to acquire the best talent are ultimately who win, right? They're who win. If they're not winning now, they're likely who's going to win in the next few years, right? Those are the stories. I'm not going to tell you anything that you probably haven't heard already, particularly as it relates to the U.S. Market. But that's the big three story, if you will, right? That's the aristocrat story. That's why LNW has held on and grown. And so, I mean, the big three for all intents and purposes are going to continue to dominate in slots, right? Where any lines that they can't hold on to, the non-big three will continue to chip away at. In some cases a little bit more than others. It's been interesting to see that there's been no response to the stepper, right? The electronic reel. And so that segment has kind of slowly gone away, and there doesn't seem to be an answer. There was one smaller supplier that seemed to have an answer for a period of time, and that now looks like it's kind of come and gone. So I think it's taken too long for suppliers to find a solution there, and now the customers have moved on, right? You're seeing high limit, where that was really important, now become more of like exclusive or private gaming, and you see the same games that a penny customer used to play on the slot side being played now at a $10, $25+ denom, right? And they're loving it, and they're asking for more. Table games is a little different than that, in that it really is all about the scrappy suppliers, right? It's like the non big guy that continues to come up with these poker derivatives, and in some cases different spins on blackjack. So that's increasingly popular, and between that and the rise of side bets, that's increasing table games hold, which is making operators really, really happy. And somewhere there, and it doesn't get perhaps in a credit, poker's poker, right? Poker is kind of having this revival. Certainly a big part of our business. It's a big part of our company's business. And then I guess last is the sports side of it, right? Which, in many ways ties to what comes after that. But in essence, right, the whole mobile component and how this whole thing becomes part of one larger ecosystem.
hmm No, thanks for that detailed breakdown, and again, a good segue into our next topic. I mean, appreciate all your analysis and answers so far. Been fantastic. Just got a couple more for you, and this next one. I was speaking to Ryan Eller recently of live casinos, and the Cordish companies, and I hadn't actually listed iGaming in Maryland as a topic because it's been a topic of debate, but it's not there yet. But he was keen to bring it up before I even mentioned it, and I thought a good topic to bring to you because what the general sense I guess from land-based operators is that Maryland is, as you described, has this very unique feel. Customers come to the properties because they love what they see, and so there is perhaps. I'm putting it quite softly here. Not as much of a willingness for iGaming as perhaps other brands or other operators or other regions in the country. What did your take? It could be completely different to that. It could be exactly that. But wanted to ask what your thoughts are and what MGM sees a kind of the potential of legalization of iGaming in Maryland.
Yeah. I mean, look, we believe iGaming is important to the future of our industry. We believe it invites a new segment of guests to participate in what we offer through a medium they may be more comfortable with. We also think it gives current guests an alternative. I think we saw some of that even during the COVID pandemic, right? But our long view is that an omni-channel approach it leads to a rising tide, and it lifts all boats with it. We know evolution is important to any industry. There are examples of that and around what happens when you embrace it and those that fight it, right? And some of that's in the history books, right? Companies like many of us love, like Blockbuster. But and then there are companies that embrace it, like banking, and you can look at what medicine has done, right? So I think it's important to our company, it's important to our industry, and that's our stance on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's interesting to see that. I guess that there's perhaps different takes within the region, but obviously looking at MGM's wider strategy, given kind of MGM and things like that obviously makes sense. And a final topic, a final question. We've talked about a lot so far, and as I say, we don't have time to go into a lot more. It'd be great to maybe one day grab a beer at a show and go into some more stories. But in terms of future goals, kind of for yourself with the property, what are you kind of, as someone who's learned so much along the way, what are you kind of outlining for yourself moving forward?
Well, look, I'd say for the property first, and no one has a crystal ball, right? But for the property, we love to think about the future and what could be. A lot of that has to do with just a lot of what we've discussed on this call, right? And how all of that ebbs and flows, and we have plans that could further expand this place and and whatnot. But there's also gaming expansion on the horizon in surrounding markets, right? And so the dynamics of all that will factor into the decisions that we make. We're very committed to this market and to continue to invest here. And the company, has fully supported us in all of that. For me personally, my goal is always to continue to grow, right? Learn and take on more. And whatever that turns into, whatever that's called, I kind of stopped thinking about roles or jobs, if you will, a long time ago. And the second I stopped doing that, I started receiving even more opportunity. So, what I can tell you is I want to, continue to be involved, in the business. I want to be more and more a part of strategy and continuing to bring people along with me, and, hoping to set up, the group of individuals that will hopefully be taking care of this place one day when I get to slow down and enjoy the fruits of my labor, and they'll take care of what will by then be one of my investments for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, Alex, thank you very much for your time. Really enjoyed speaking with you. I'm sure we'll catch up again soon at some point, and best of luck with everything you're looking to achieve at National Harbor.
Thanks so much, Tim.
Thank you. And to our viewers, thanks for watching as well.